What's going on, guys? It's the Draft Nerd, and today I'm going to be reacting to my way too early 2024 NFL mock draft, which was made about a year ago. So there's going to be a lot of wild picks here, and I'll be surprised if I get more than 3 right in this entire video. And it should be fun to look back and see just how close I was. There's probably going to be guys that weren't even in this draft class, so without further ado, let's get into it. So it looks like I had at number 1, Caleb Williams going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'm pretty sure I had them trading up in this scenario. It was the only trade I had just because I didn't want whichever team drafting 1 overall to draft a quarterback, and I knew, which is one of my correct picks, is that Caleb Williams was going to go number 1 overall. I just got the team wrong. It ended up being the Bears. I had it being the Buccaneers, but I had from day 1 Caleb Williams going number 1 overall. Now that's not too impressive because that was pretty much consensus at that point, but I'll still count it as a correct pick. And at number 2, it looks like I had the Arizona Cardinals taking Marvin Harrison Jr. So I got the team right. I'll get half a point for that, but I didn't end up getting the selection right. Marvin Harrison ended up going number 4 to the Cardinals. But even back then, I knew that Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to be a top prospect. He was one of the best receivers I've ever seen. So I was pretty high on him going into the year. And it shows with the number 2 overall pick. At number 3, it looks like I had the first defender going off the board to the Cardinals again with the number 3 pick, and that's Jared Verse. Now, Jared Verse didn't end up being the number 1 defensive player off the board, but he was a first round pick. He went, I believe, 19 to the Rams, so he was the 3rd edge rusher off the board, so, not too crazy of a pick. I know around this time last year, Jared Verse was, considered the top, defensive prospect in the class, and he fell a few picks to pick 19, but, not that egregious of a pick. And then at number 4, I had Joe Alt. Everyone was pretty high on Joe Alt. I was really high on him, and he ended up going, 5 to the Chargers, so a pretty solid pick here. A pretty calm, first 4 picks, but I'm sure it's going to get a lot crazier the more we go into it. Alright, so it looks like at number 5, my QB2 was Drake May, and that kind of stayed true the whole draft process. Drake May ended up being QB3 in real life, but, for me, he was always QB2 from, way back then until now. And, this could have came true. He could have went to the Commanders, but they ended up passing on him to go with Jaden Daniels, who I'm pretty sure isn't going to be in this mock draft. Like I said, I haven't seen any of these picks since I made this, so it's going to be a surprise to me as well. Looks like at number 6, we went Olu Fashanu to the Packers. The Packers did end up going offensive tackle. Granted, they picked a little too late to go with an Olu Fashanu, so they settled with a Jordan Morgan. But Olu Fashanu was my tackle 2. He ended up being, tackle 3 or 4 in real life. I was always high on him. I was really high on him for the 2023 draft before he went back to Penn State. So not too surprising of a pick. But then at number 7, probably the most wild pick we're going to see is Kalen King, number 7 to the Raiders. Kalen King didn't end up going until, I believe, the 7th round. He just had a terrible, year, really. It started, in his last season at Penn State. It carried over into the Senior Bowl and into the Combine. He just really fell down people's boards, and I was a big believer in Kalen King. And, I still kind of am. I think for a 7th round pick, that's good value, but, man, the fall from grace from Kalen King needs to be studied at this point. And then at number 8, I had the Titans going Dallas Turner, the edge rusher out of Alabama. I think he could have went around this range. I think this was probably his ceiling was, later in the top 10. He ended up going, I believe, 17 maybe to the Vikings. So, not too crazy of a pick. He's a really raw prospect, but I think he could end up being the best defensive player in this entire class. Next up, we had number 9, Kool-Aid McKinstry going to the Rams. And I've always been a super big fan of Kool-Aid McKinstry. He ended up falling down later in the process. His teammate Terrion Arnold, who I doubt will be in this video, ended up, getting drafted ahead of him. Guys like Quinion Mitchell came out of nowhere. And, of course, Cooper DeJean, who might be in this video. I was really high on Cooper DeJean early on. But, Kool-Aid McKinstry was, one of my favorite cornerbacks, especially during summer scouting and around this time. But he ended up falling off a little bit, but still a really good player in my opinion. At number 10, we got our first player that wasn't even in this draft class, and that's JT Tuimoloau. He's going to be in the 2025 draft class most likely, and, even if he came out of this draft, he wouldn't have been a first-round pick, I don't think. He probably would have been an early second-round pick. Just very inconsistent for, a lot of the season, but he shows really good flashes, and he could end up in the first round next year. I have him in my first round in my way too early 2025 mock draft, which dropped yesterday. So if you want to look at that, go check that out. It's on my page now. But yeah, still a little too high for me. And I believe I might have had him going to the Bears in my 2025 mock draft, so that's pretty cool. On to number 11, I had, the Bears going Brock Bowers. A solid pick here. Brock Bowers is one of the best tight end prospects we've ever seen, and he never really seen his draft stock fall too much. But since he is a tight end, it's not valued as much, so, that's why I had him around this top 10 range, and that's ended up where he went was, I believe, 13 to the Raiders? Moving on to number 12, I had the tackle out of Alabama, J.C. Latham. He ended up going 7 to the Titans, which in my opinion was a little bit of a reach. But here at this number 12 spot, I think that would have been more, around his range. And, the Patriots ended up not being as good as I initially thought. They ended up picking at number 3 and taking Drake May, which is a better pick than a J.C. Latham pick in my opinion. Moving on, we had number 13, the Atlanta Falcons going Troy Franklin, the receiver out of Oregon. And I was a huge fan of Troy Franklin, even to begin with. And I still was, all the way up until the draft. But, unfortunately, he fell to early, 4th round. I still think that was a steal, an absolute steal for the Broncos. But, in my opinion, he ended up being a fringe first-round pick, once the draft came around. Just a bit smaller in weight, maybe not the most physical guy. But I know when I made this video, I was extremely high, and I forced myself to put him at 13. I wanted to put him in the top 10. That's how high I was on Troy Franklin. Number 14, we got the New York Giants, my favorite team, going Jer'Zhan Newton. And I'm pretty sure my headspace was that Leonard Williams wouldn't necessarily be on the team, and I wanted to get a replacement for him, that being Jer'Zhan Newton. In hindsight, the Giants need a lot more than just a Leonard Williams replacement, so maybe a bad pick in my opinion, but the actual player I think should have been a first round pick in Jer'Zhan Newton. He ended up falling to early day 2, but a first round talent in my opinion. I'm not too mad at myself for that pick. Moving on to number 15, we got the Broncos going LSU defensive lineman Mason Smith. And I was really high on him. I thought he was going to bounce back from his ACL injury a lot better than he did. A really just raw athletic guy. And in hindsight, I should have known that he wasn't going to be as productive coming off of an ACL injury. He ended up going a little bit later than the first round, obviously, but still a really raw guy with high upside. At number 16, I had Jeremiah Trotter going to the Seahawks. Another guy who fell to day 3, an undersized, not very athletic linebacker. I should have known that he wouldn't have won in the first round. Not many linebackers do to begin with, and Jeremiah Trotter was never that talented of a guy in my opinion. But for some reason, I put him in here at number 16. Moving on to number 17, I had the Steelers going Kingsley Suamataia. Not a bad pick in my opinion. The Steelers ended up going Troy Fautanu, still an offensive tackle pick. And I think Kingsley Suamataia was, a solid pick. He ended up going in the, I believe, second round to the Chiefs, so not too terrible of a pick. And then moving on, we got 2 guys who ended up going back to school and is going to be in the 2025 draft class, and quarterback Quinn Ewers and receiver Emeka Ibuka. Both really good prospects. Quinn Ewers definitely needs to look to be a little bit more efficient, but, the arm talent's there for him. And then Emeka Ibuka, just didn't really have the most productive season behind Marvin Harrison Jr. The quarterback play wasn't great either, with Kyle McCord throwing him the ball. I think next year will be a lot better for him, and I could still see him going around this range next year. And then at 20, I had the Saints going Laiatu Latu, the UCLA edge rusher. And, in hindsight, now the Saints really needed a tackle, so they went ahead and got Talise Fuanga. But, Laiatu Latu went around this range. He actually went a little bit earlier. And I'm pretty sure in this video I was talking about how he had to medically retire, and I thought that would push him down boards. And that kind of came true, but just went a little bit earlier than pick 20. Up next we had, I did have A.D. Mitchell in the first round. We had the Dolphins taking A.D. Mitchell. I think A.D. Mitchell should have been a first round pick, even up until now. Ended up being a third round pick because of character concerns. Boo. I think A.D. Mitchell's a very talented guy and could end up being a top 3 receiver in this class. I'm not mad at that pick at all. I'm surprised I had him in the first round though. And then we had Cedric Van Pran going. And yeah, definitely didn't go anywhere near the first round. Good player, but no, not in the first round. Same with Cameron Kitchens. A ball hawking safety I thought was going to have a really good season. Didn't ended up, living up to my expectations at least. And then Javon Bullard, cornerback, safety, slot cornerback, whatever you want to classify him as. I was really high on him during the summer. and I'm still pretty high on him. I like him a lot as a player, but still not a first round pick. But I'm not mad at any three of those guys. They were really hyped up to me in the summer. And then moving on, we had Xavier Worthy going to the Packers there at 25. He ended up being a first round pick right around this range, and I just got the team wrong. But I ended up not being as high on Xavier Worthy as I was back in this video. I think Xavier Worthy was a day 2 pick, but with the Chiefs drafting him, I didn't mind that pick. But, if he went to the Packers, I would not have liked that pick here at 25. And then we had Chop Robinson going to the Lions. I like that pick a lot. The Lions need edge rush help, and Chop Robinson would have been a good addition. Chop Robinson ended up going around this range anyways, so really good pick in my opinion. I kind of got that one on the money. Number 27, I had Blake Fisher going to the Jaguars. Yeah, I was really high on Blake Fisher. Ended up being, I believe, a second round pick, but a bit of a reach in my opinion, so not the greatest pick. And then 28, I had Cooper DeJean going in the first round. Like I said, I was always high on Cooper DeJean. I thought he deserved to be a first round pick. Ended up selling to the Eagles somehow. Eagles always get good players in the draft. But yeah, I like this pick a lot. The Bills need a cornerback help with Tre'Davious White going down with injury and not really having anyone else. So I really like that pick a lot too. And then ending the draft off, we had the Philadelphia Eagles going Tommy Eichenberg. I was extremely high on Tommy Eichenberg. In hindsight, good technically, has really good instincts, but, not the athlete you need to be a linebacker taken in the first round. So that was definitely a miss on my opinion, but I've always been the big Tommy Eichenberg guy. And then at number 30, I had Malik Nabers. Around this time, not many people, I don't want to say not many people, but he was around this, back end of the first round type of guy. He ends up going number 6 to the Giants. Great pick in my opinion, and I wish I would have been a little bit higher on Malik Nabers because I liked him now, but, I just had questions with him. And then at 31, we had TreVeyon Henderson going to the Bengals. He ended up going back to school, but I think he could definitely end up being a first round pick in the 2025 draft. He'd have to have a really good season, especially since he's playing alongside Quinshon Judkins. But, I was always really high on TreVeyon Henderson. I thought he could be a Saquon Barkley type of player. And then ending out the draft, I had Braylon Trace going to the Chiefs. Big Braylon Trace guy even till this day. Ended up going 3rd round to the Falcons. I like that pick a lot for the Falcons. And, yeah, I don't think that was too bad of a pick. So, not too many terrible picks here, to be honest. I mean, Kalen King was a terrible one. Tommy Eichenberg was a pretty bad one. And I guess Jeremiah Trotter was a pretty bad one, and Mason Smith. So definitely some questionable selections on my end, but for the most part, I think I got a lot of, good picks in here. I mean, I got the Marvin Harrison Jr. to the right team, Joe Alt around the good selection. Overall, I'm not too embarrassed of this mock draft, but definitely didn't end up being correct. So let me know what you guys think of my mock draft 1 year later. And if you like the video, consider subscribing. I'm going to be pumping out a lot of draft content this offseason. So with that being said, I'm the Draft Nerd, and thanks for watching.